What's going on, everybody? Welcome back to Steelers Breakdown here on the Steelers on Penn Live YouTube channel. Nick Farabaugh here with you guys. Steelers-Patriots preview. How do you guys feel about that? Taylor Kyles here from CLNS Media. This is my guy here. He does great work over there. Taylor, what's up and how are you doing, man?
I'm excited because, as you mentioned earlier, we're actually going to get to share a press box for the first time. So cool to see what the vibe's going to be like. It should be a fun game, man. And I'm just looking forward to it because these are two teams that are in very interesting places. You know, given the history of the teams and the head coaches they got, it should be a rock.
It should be a rock fight. And this one I think is going to be a fun one because of what the Steelers kind of have going for them. Or not for them, I guess, because they're kind of all over the place. As you guys know who have watched this, I just was tired of watching this football team last week. They were so bad in so many different ways. But let's talk about the Patriots. So what do you see kind of on this offense right now? You see Drake May kind of coming off what appeared to be one of the strongest games of his career. And then you also have this really fun stable of backs, I think, that could be a real issue for Pittsburgh given their run defense issues.
Yeah, I think it was Drake May's best game of his career. And a big part of that was because the week before, I was worried. He was missing some gimme throws that you really don't want to see him miss, which is kind of continuing a trend from the summer where pretty much every day he'd have at least one or two throws where you weren't exactly sure who he was going to or if he was even trying to throw it away. Like, I'm talking about misses that were that bad. There were also some times in that first game where you kind of leave the pocket when he didn't need to, especially early on. It felt like he kind of had the yips, and instead of just going to his underneath target, he tried to run. I didn't love how he protected himself all the time, but Vrabel was fine with it, so who am I to judge? But against Miami, you really saw him tighten up, where there was one play early on to Austin Hooper, a kind of a deepish throw. Could have been a touchdown with better ball placement, but it wasn't. But then really throughout the rest of the game, his accuracy was on point. You saw him willing to take a profit. Second and, 15, that's okay. I'm just going to dump it down to Ramondre Stevenson. Even in third and long situations, when they were approaching midfield, he'd say, you know what, let me just take a profit, set up a fourth and manageable, knowing that the offensive staff has enough trust in him, and obviously Mike Vrabel, to actually go for it. So Drake May really showed what you wanted from him, where he's got all the arm talent. He allows Josh McDaniels to be very aggressive, especially in his play action concepts. But there's also just the playing quarterback and the game managing. We can all talk about the exciting highlights, but really you want someone who knows how to take the profit and minimize bad plays. I thought Drake did a great job of that. And you talk about the backfield. I mean, Ramondre Stevenson, people forgot exactly how good he was because the Patriots offensive line been pretty terrible in recent seasons, and the guy's been averaging like negative yards before contact a lot of the time. So it's not like he's gotten a fair shake, and there's been a lot of critiques. Now, he did have a fumbling problem, hasn't fumbled yet this year, so you can't really complain about that. But really, the fact that Ramondre is a complete back. He's an elite, I think, pass blocking back, and that's the reason why if you look at PFF and you look at how many times Patriots running backs have pass blocked, Travion Henderson has 2 snaps, Ramondre Stevenson has all of the others because of his reliability in that vein and also his receiving ability. People see him as just an underneath checkdown guy. His rookie year with Josh McDaniels, he showed that he can go vertical and be more of a downfield presence. We saw that on a 55-yard catch and run where he embarrassed multiple defenders. So Ramondre Stevenson kind of reminding people who he is. Antonio Gibson had limited touches. He's more of their RB3, but he's explosive, makes the most of those touches, usually averages like 5 yards a carry when he does run the ball, and he had a kick return touchdown. Now, Travion Henderson is the interesting one because I've been telling a lot of people after the offseason, I was like, hey, buy stock in Travion Henderson. I look really bad right now because, and it was surprising because Henderson coming out of college was known as a fantastic pass blocking back. But I couldn't really tell what the case was that first week. His snap count was lower than I expected. My guess was, well, if Ramondre's in on third downs, they probably don't trust the young gun to handle a lot of blitz pickups and different pass blocking assignments. Lo and behold, he actually gets a couple of opportunities against the Dolphins, gets 2 holding penalties, and allows 2 sacks, or 1 or 2 sacks at least. There was one that was kind of iffy, but I'm pretty sure it was supposed to be his guy. So really talented player. Usually when he's on the field, they're either trying to get the ball to him as a receiver or as a runner, or they're using him as a decoy. He's still a good player, but he's still very much in the growing phase, and a good reminder that, hey, not every rookie can just go out there and handle a heavy workload. So still a 3-headed, very dangerous monster in that backfield 4, if you want to count Drake May. But Henderson needs to be more consistent as a pass blocker, so expect a lot of Ramondre Stevenson, and even a lot of split backs with Ramondre and Travion at the same time. We saw that kind of uptick in the second week of the season.
Yeah, wouldn't be surprising. I know Mike T mentioned Antonio Gibson in there too. He's their kick returner type right now. Steelers, I think, kind of a hidden thing that could be big here is that special teams area. The Steelers on special teams have been a little bit of a roller coaster.
Patriots
too.
Patriots too. It's been very, very. They literally let up a punt return touchdown, and then Antonio Gibson the next play returned to kickoff. So I think they're kind of different sides of the same coin.
Calvin Austin can get loose, and we know that. That's something he can do as a Steelers punt returner. But I do look at this receiving core, and this is actually one, Taylor, if you can believe it, Steelers fans during, considering where they were last year, Steelers fans were looking at this Patriots receiving core and be like, which one can I have? And it was like Kendrick Bourne, Javon Baker, both get released. Steelers turned out not really interested in either of them. So this room now with Diggs, Kayshon Boutte, Pop Douglas, Kyle Williams. There's a lot of different skill sets in this room right now. Break down this room plus the tight ends that is Austin Hooper and Hunter Henry. Some guys that can give the Steelers matchup problems. But considering, obviously, the struggles in the secondary, this is one to watch.
I got to start with the tight end room because really this team wants to be a two tight end offense. And that's a lot of that is the fact that Drake May loves his big targets. He likes guys where he can just kind of put it in an area and trust them to be able to go get it. That's what he gets from Austin Hooper and Hunter Henry. They may be on the older side. They're not super explosive, but they're great, trustworthy security blankets. So Josh McDaniels also has faith in them. He's already coached Hunter Henry. He's already coached Austin Hooper. He knows what he's got there. So like last week, we saw Hunter Henry shift to be a fullback, and then he ends up running a corner out of the backfield. And like I mentioned, there was a leak play to Austin Hooper where he wound up kind of bailing Drake May out of a not so great throw downfield. So really it starts more with the tight ends and the versatility that they present in terms of formations and maybe getting the defense in packages that could be disadvantageous given whatever the Patriots are trying to do. Now, going to the wide receiver room, Kayshon Boutte is the guy in that room. There hasn't been a ton of consistency during the season, which is odd because like Mario Douglas was easily their top receiver this summer, which made sense. Josh McDaniels' offense, he's a slot receiver. They get all the great matchups and a lot of the first reads. It's probably going to be him, right? The offense funnels through. Wrong. It's been Kayshon Boutte. He's their X receiver. I kind of like him more as a Z, to be honest, because I love him as a blocker, and I'd like to see what he can do with some more kind of designed or free releases. But he's been very good against press. He had one target last week and went for an 18-yard touchdown against Jack Jones where he had his arm pinned and caught it with one hand. He and Drake may have excellent downfield chemistry that Drake doesn't really have with anybody else in that receiver room. So if you're looking at one-on-one matchups, Kayshon Boutte is going to be a guy you want to watch. But DeMario Douglas, it's been odd because he's a talented player, but I wonder the speculatory part of me because his role has been reduced. Like I said, this is a two tight end offense, but also kind of shifting even more to a two running back offense, whether that's fullback Jack Westover or more commonly Travion Henderson or an Antonio Gibson type. But Pop, he's small, right? He's like, people always compared him to Josh Downs, which made sense. Josh Downs is 5'10 and Pop is 5'8. That doesn't sound like a huge difference, but 5'8 is literally the bare minimum pretty much to play receiver in the NFL. And I always go back to Wes Welker talking about Brady. And now Brady was the only quarterback, and obviously eventually Peyton Manning, who could hit him in stride consistently because it's a totally different target, right? Like if you're used to throwing to a bunch of 6-foot guys, it's a different world throwing to someone who is 5'8". We've seen Drake miss him a few times. Also, I'm curious if Pop is always doing what he's supposed to do against zone coverages and with the option routes, because we've seen more of Stephon Diggs, who we thought was going to be more of a Z, and he has been, but he spent a lot of time in the slot with Pop off the field. So you throw a lot of money at Diggs, you understand why he's out there, but Diggs' experience, his consistency, I think just makes him a more favorable guy to put on the field, especially if there's only two receivers out there, than a Pop Douglas. So DeMario Douglas hasn't had a huge role. Stephon Diggs, more of a chain mover than anything else, which you expected at this point in his career, but at least giving Drake May, that veteran who he hasn't really had in a room before, who has had success before, and he knows he can trust. And then kind of rounding out the room is Mac Hollins. He plays more than I think a lot of people would expect as someone who isn't a huge receiving threat, but he's a big part of their blocking game, their play action scheme, where kind of like Ben Skoranek, he'll shift towards the formation either to kind of help out on the wing or behind to be kind of a sniffer role, release to the second level from there. They also have Kyle Williams. His role was a little bit increased last week. He's their speedster they drafted in the third round. He had a shot play dialed up for him that Drake May got sacked on. I actually asked him today if Drake would have just let that thing fly, and he's like, I think so, because, hey, it's hard to overthrow me. So a lot of different body types and skill types in that room, but at the end of the day, it's a lot of possession receivers, although Drake will take a shot every once in a while to Kayshon Boutte. And I know Patriots fans are hoping that this is the week that we see more from Kyle Williams, because, again, it's kind of upticked, but he's only had one catch in the past 2 weeks.
Yeah, I mean, it's a receiving room that I think is going to give the Steelers some trouble given what they've had just in terms of communication issues. In terms of man-to-man stuff, if they can maybe hash those out, I think that'll be a lot more fun to see. When you look at this offensive line, and the Steelers' pass rush has been something that has kind of been a weird thing this year. They've gotten a lot of pressures, but haven't finished for a lot of sacks. They've heated up a lot of quarterbacks. The blitz rate for them, I think, is over 40% right now. It's an unsustainable blitz rate for them, but they're continuing to send the house, and they do not care. So talk to me about this room now. They have Will Campbell. Onwenu finally is inside, and you kind of have some continuity at times. You have Morgan Moses, who's dealing with an injury right now. How does this kind of offensive line feel right now, and how do you feel about them, despite not the Steelers not having Alex Highsmith this week? How do you feel about them against Watt and Hayward and Herbig and Benton and maybe Derek Harmon?
So starting with the veterans on the right side, Mike Onwenu has been a bit inconsistent. There have been times where he's kind of been walked back more than you'd expect from a guy who's like 330 pounds. Morgan Moses, I've been pretty consistently impressed by over the past 2 weeks. He really wowed me against Max Crosby, held up on an island much more than I thought the Patriots would even give him an opportunity to. Jalen Phillips beat him pretty badly on a ghost move last week, and that's kind of the thing with Morgan Moses is those pure speed guys, especially the young guns who have those crazy get-offs. Obviously, TJ White still got plenty in the tank, so that's going to be a fun matchup to watch. But that right side last week took a big step forward. The week before, they let up a couple of stunts, which you do not want from your veterans. So I still think that speed and stunts are things that you're going to want to challenge them on, like Mike Onwenu. He's kind of hard to get through, so you want to force him to change directions multiple times if you can by thinking you're coming here and then having somebody come from a different direction. And again, Morgan Moses, the biggest thing is just threatening him with speed and really forcing the 34-year-old to kind of get out there in space. Garrett Bradbury is someone who I was not high on in pass protection. He really struggled last year, and still you don't want him one-on-one. But he's impressed me because he's a smart player. I mean, his work against stunts and just diagnosing things, he's been in the league for a long time, and it shows in his ability. Really, Drake is the one making calls, but him kind of making up for some mistakes and making sure that the pocket is clean, even when he's not actively doing something, just looking for work, has been very good. But the most impressive part of this Patriots offensive line has been the left side. Will Campbell had a lot of criticism coming out of the draft, and I was even skeptical because of not just the arm length, but the wingspan. Just doesn't really have the typical tackle body type, but is a phenomenal athlete who's got really good feet, powerful hands. And I think he's learning to use his independent hands more versus just kind of throwing a two-hand punch, because in the NFL, if you're going to throw a two-hand punch every time, they are going to embarrass you. And he's had a pretty good 2 weeks. There were some lapses along the way, but nothing egregious for a guy in his first 2 starts. And Jared Wilson, the college Georgia center, who's actually transitioned to left guard. So the Patriots have 2 rookies on their left side, but their communication has really improved. They were getting killed by stunts in the preseason and at points during the summer. But last week, you were seeing each guy got one time on quick throws where they didn't really pay for it. For the most part, you see Jared Wilson snapping his head around, oh, I don't have anybody, or oh, this guy's just trying to hold my attention. I know exactly what you're trying to do. It looks like he's back in college in that respect, which is really cool to see. And he's a freak athlete where even if you beat him initially, does a great job of repositioning, getting his hands in the right place, and just posturing himself to at least stop somebody from getting a clean hit on his quarterback. So both of the rookies, 0 pressures allowed last week. I had them down with 2 technical losses, but you're not mad about that from a rookie left side, especially given the depth that Miami has on the edge. So I'm not sure they're going to have the same game against a more talented Steelers front, but at least they took a significant step forward.
Yeah, we'll see if they can kind of grind out the run game and things like that. That's going to be an interesting matchup. But let's kind of flip sides. This Patriots defense, it's got some names I think that Steelers fans will still know. Christian Gonzalez is obviously trying to come back from a hamstring issue. Carlton Davis is now in the fold. But where I really look at this, and this has been kind of the commonality with the Steelers, is they have faced two really good fronts. The Jets front's very talented. The Seahawks front's very talented. And I also think this Patriots front's quite good. Between Barmore, between Harold Landry, between you look at Milton Williams, it's a good front. Keon White, we'll see if he plays. What about this front makes it so dynamic? And then also talk about the linebacker situation and how that's kind of been the question mark of this defense so far.
Defensive line, it starts in the middle. Christian Barmore had a crazy breakout season in 2023. Genuinely looked like one of the best players at what's already a crowded position in the NFL. There's so many game-wrecking defensive tackles, but he really played in that tier. Now, unfortunately, had to deal with blood clots last year. And even now, they've been very slow. He didn't play in the preseason. They kind of kept him on a schedule during the summer because you don't want to overexert the guy. The first week, you saw it in run defense and pass rush. It wasn't quite there. Felt like in week 2, he really started to look like himself, which is scary because Milton Williams, a lot of questions about how is he in run defense? Can he actually be a full-time starter? Yes and yes. Not only is he look good in both of those departments as someone who plays a lot of snaps, but he still looks fantastic as a pass rusher and still ranks among the best pass rushing interior defenders in the league. So starts with those guys on the edges. You got Harold Landry. I think it's 3.5 sacks right now. Was quiet for most of the game last week. I'm not sure how much of that was just wanting to contain Tua or not. But once he pinned his ears back, you see he's still got the quick get off. He's still a guy that you need to account for, and he still has power. So he may not be the best hand fighter, but when you got power and speed, it at least allows you to change things up. On the other edge, you got Caleb Chase, who, he's been getting chipped a lot because when he has one-on-one pass rush opportunities, he's built on a very strong end of last season and has made his share of plays. And the most fun part, I think, is the fact that not only can all these guys win one-on-one against most matchups, especially obviously with the Steelers having young tackles, that might be an area where the Patriots like to exploit them, but in stunts. It's impressive how well coordinated they are, given I watched the Patriots last year not be able to run a stunt successfully to save their lives. And this unit that's pretty much brand new has really impressive chemistry, and they communicate well. Like Milton Williams' game-sealing sack came on a play where he and Landry saw a certain look because they were chipping Landry. They were like, you know what, let's just run a game here and try to beat them, and it worked. So the defensive line really is living up to what people expected them to be. They're also very good in run defense. They've been super disruptive. And unlike other Patriots teams, they're living behind the backfield rather than simply trying to build a wall. So that's been good. Linebackers haven't been as good. Now, I will say this. I think they do a good job of, when they're in zone coverage, getting in areas that deter throws. And those are things that fly under the radar. I want to give them their props. But tackling, man. It's a Mike Vrabel defense, and the linebackers can't tackle. Robert Spillane leads the NFL in missed tackles with 8. I believe Christian Ellis is tied for second with 5. And not all of them have been created equal. The Patriots do a good job of swarming so that these missed tackles aren't just completely disastrous. But you also had plays like last week where Robert Spillane on one of his only man coverage snaps loses against Devon Achane. He has no chance of catching up with him. Christian Ellis misses a tackle. Craig Woodson does his best while flying in. He misses, and Jalen Hawkins couldn't stop Achane before he was able to cross the goal line. So these linebackers, they're physical, they're smart. I think for the most part, they do the right thing. But when they miss tackles, a lot of the time, just the defense pays for it. And that's by far their biggest issue there. So defensive line's doing their job, and that's what you want when all the money's invested there. But the linebackers have to be better, because if they're not, as we know, the Steelers have been very successful after the catch. They're going to get burned. And I think there's a chance we see more of Marte Mapu, who was a 3rd-round pick for the team a few years ago, who's one of the better athletes on the team. Used to be a safety, but in this Mike Vrabel scheme, he moved to linebacker, and he actually had an interception.
Yeah, so that's something to think about. Warren in the flat, Metcalf on screens. They haven't really used Jonnu there yet, but I think Jonnu's going to be part of it. So something to see there as well. Last kind of step here for this team, secondary. Do we expect Christian Gonzalez to be back? One, and if he's not back, what does that look like? How's his corner room playing? And then obviously the safety room's experienced a little bit of shuffling. No Jabril Peppers. Duggar's now more of a reserve big nickel type. Craig Woodson's in there. So what's going on with the secondary right now?
Yeah, so I think Christian Gonzalez is going to play. It feels like that's where things are trending, but at the same time, we don't know. Is he going to be on a pitch count? Like, does he only play 3rd downs, critical situations? No one knows. So we'll assume he doesn't play, because if he does, we know he's probably going to shadow DK Metcalf. They're probably going to play more man coverage, all of those things. Carlton Davis would be their number 1 corner, and we know what it looks like when Carlton Davis goes up against DK Metcalf. Like, it was a dogfight. I think it was last year, where Carlton Davis had some plays, but I think it's fair to say that DK Metcalf won that matchup. So I wouldn't love that if that was what ultimately wound up being the case. Outside, it's been a combination of Alex Austin and Marcus Jones. Marcus Jones, they're undersized guy, but he's very fast, very twitchy. You don't want him covering anybody who's like 6 foot or higher because there's just not a lot he can do on jump balls. But against smaller receivers, he's a really tough guy to separate against, and he's very feisty. So if you're going up and making a catch, you better make sure you're focused or he's going to break it up. Alex Austin's had a target on his back. I think right now he might lead the NFL in yards allowed through the air. A lot of that was because last week he gets burned by Jalen Waddle on a corner. That happens. Like, really, Alex Austin is ideally more your fourth corner, more of a spot starter. And then there was a deep shot where he tried to kind of slow play Tyreek Hill going deep in a deep third. That didn't work. Tyreek burned him, but Tua way under threw the ball. And then Alex kind of had to adjust because Tyreek had to come back to it. So those were 2 big plays he let up. But honestly, for a fourth corner, I think Alex Austin is very good. He's got some positional versatility, and he's competitive. So it is a competitive cornerback room, really led by Marcus Jones and Carlton Davis. You're hoping that Alex Austin maybe factors in more as a big nickel type or someone who can cover some tight ends if you want, and you like those matchups. But for the most part, I think it should be, if everyone's healthy, Christian Gonzalez, Carlton Davis, Marcus Jones in the slot. And then at safety, it's really been Jalen Hawkins and Craig Woodson. That's it. And this is a defense where it's not quite as specific as it's been in the past, where, in the glory days for the Patriots, Devin McCourty's playing deep free safety. Sometimes he'll be a robber. He's a robber. Harmon's the free safety. And then you got Patrick Chung in the box. It's not that specific. Hawkins and Woodson do a bit of everything, although last week you saw a more specific role because they used a lot of cover 2 disguises. So they kind of have Woodson in the box before he would bail deep, and often Hawkins as the deep middle defender, so they didn't have to put Robert Spillane in a position where it's like, hey, go run with Tyreek Hill. I dare you. So there was some fun kind of tweaks there. And Kyle Duggar, who obviously they had Jabril Peppers and Kyle Duggar, both wound up backups by the end of the summer. Kyle Duggar missed all of the spring. He was recovering from an ankle injury. Felt like he was pretty slow to get back to himself, but did towards the end of the preseason. He's really only been used in the slot in their 3 safety nickel packages. But last week we saw him take some of his first deep snaps, so could see more of a rotational role for him and more varied kind of responsibilities there. But it's, again, the defensive back rooms are tough. I think they're smart. But the safeties haven't been perfect tacklers. That's one thing that I'm definitely going to be watching, and really just seeing how they're able to handle the speed and some of the smaller guys. Because Marcus Jones, I like his matchup against everybody not named DK Metcalf or Skoranek just because he's a bigger guy. But you have kind of bigger corners, so I do wonder how they're going to match up with kind of the smaller, speedier guys that the Steelers are going to.
Yeah, we will see. I think that's going to be one of the key matchups. The yak stuff going to be a huge part of this. So, Taylor, just kind of give me your overview of this game, how you see it playing out. You don't have to give a prediction, but just kind of how you think the keys are for both these sides.
For the Steelers, I think they are going to want to get the ball. I really wouldn't try to mess with the trenches for the Patriots, if I'm honest. You can tell me more if there's something in the run game that they can build on, but the Patriots trenches have really not been very friendly. So if I'm Arthur Smith, I'm saying, hey, Aaron Rodgers, we're going to use the pass as an extension of the run and get it out fast, see if these guys can tackle us, and then maybe take a couple shots, although I wouldn't recommend it because the Patriots, there's one thing they've been good at when at full strength, it's been defending the deep ball, but also Aaron Rodgers can put that thing wherever he wants. So I think they're going to want to really pepper them underneath a lot and then take calculated shots downfield. And as a pass defense, I know that you mentioned it in our show that they don't disguise a lot. I think you have to, because Drake May is smart enough where if you just tell him what you're going to do pre-snap, he's going to pick you apart on his first read unless he doesn't like it. And he doesn't get rattled very easily either. So you can get your pressure on him with the blitzes and, have guys right there. But if you don't actually get there, he can still dice you up. So I do think you want to make sure that you're heating him up, but also playing some tight coverage. And then I would say defensively for the Patriots, tackle. It's really that simple. I think if they are consistent tackling, they have enough talent that they can keep this one tight. But if they're going to let all these fast receivers catch the ball and then toast them, it's going to be a very long afternoon. And then we're going to see the rock fight that we talked about, where maybe those aren't, the plays that turn it into a 30-30 shootout or anything like that. But those are going to be the plays where if the defense does hold for the most part, it's going to keep the Steelers in the game. So Patriots need to continue to build on the momentum that they built, but you've got to respect the Steelers team because it's a lot of veterans. They got good coaching and experienced coaching, and they're not going to walk in here and roll over in Gillette. So you got to make sure you're bringing your A.
Steelers haven't won in Gillette in 16 years. It's been a
Oh
long
my God,
time.
are you serious?
Yeah, 16 years. It's been a long time. Brady
Whoa.
dominated this matchup up there, man. He did. So it's been a while. But the Pittsburgh Steelers and the Patriots will play on Sunday. It'll be a good matchup. I will be up there. I will be there with Taylor. That'll be wonderful. Taylor, let them know where they can follow you, follow your stuff, and everything else you have.
Yep, thank you for having me, buddy. So you can find me on Twitter or X at tkyles39. I write over at clnsmedia.com, but most of my stuff is video, which you can check out over on YouTube at Patriots Press Pass.
All right, folks, make sure to like, comment, subscribe, turn on notification bell. You can follow me at Farabaugh FB and check out the stuff at penlive.com/Steelers.